The morning sun cast long shadows across the fields of New Haven as children ran toward the school building. Their laughter filled the air while parents waved goodbye from their doorsteps. It was supposed to be just another normal day on the colony world that humans had called home for 15 years. Captain Jake Morrison stood at his office window, watching his 12-year-old daughter Amy race her friends to the school entrance. Her blonde hair bounced as she ran, and her backpack swung wildly behind her. Jake smiled at the sight. This was why he had accepted the assignment to New Haven. After years of military service on Earth, he wanted Amy to grow up somewhere peaceful, somewhere safe. His wife Lisa walked into the office carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Jake and stood beside him at the window. As the colony's chief medical officer, she had already completed her morning rounds at the clinic. "The alien delegation arrives today," Lisa said, taking a sip of her coffee. "Ben is nervous about the whole thing." Jake nodded. Colony Administrator Ben Carter had been talking about nothing else for weeks. The Zephyrians had requested permission to visit New Haven as part of their cultural exchange program. They claimed they wanted to learn about human agricultural methods and share their advanced technology. "Something feels wrong about this," Jake said. "Why would such an advanced species want to visit a small farming colony?" Lisa looked at him with concern. "You've been saying that for days. Maybe they're just curious about how we live." "Maybe," Jake replied, but his voice carried doubt. At 10 in the morning, 3 massive ships appeared in the sky above New Haven. They were unlike anything the colonists had ever seen. The vessels were smooth and silver, shaped like teardrops, and they moved without making any sound. They landed in the field outside town with gentle grace. The entire colony gathered to watch as the alien visitors emerged from their ships. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. They wore flowing robes that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Their leader introduced himself as High Curator Velthek. "Greetings, humans of New Haven," Velthek said in perfect English. His voice was soft but carried an odd tone that made Jake uncomfortable. "We come in peace to learn from your ways and share our knowledge." Ben Carter stepped forward clearly, excited by the historic moment. "Welcome to New Haven. We're honored by your visit." Velthek smiled, but Jake noticed it didn't reach his eyes. "We are particularly interested in your educational methods. We would like to observe how you teach your young ones." "Of course," Ben replied quickly. "Our school is open to you. The children would love to meet beings from another world." Over the next 3 days, the Zephyrians spent most of their time at the school. They watched the children during lessons, asked questions about human development, and took detailed notes on everything they saw. The children were fascinated by the aliens and gathered around them during breaks, asking countless questions about their home world and technology. Amy came home each evening full of stories about the visitors. "Mom, they know so much about science." "And math," she said excitedly. "High Curator Velthek says humans have great potential that we don't even realize." Jake felt his unease growing stronger each day. He noticed how the aliens paid special attention to the brightest children. They seemed particularly interested in Amy, who was one of the top students in her class. When he shared his concerns with Lisa, she tried to calm his fears. "They're scientists, Jake. Of course they're interested in intelligent children. It doesn't mean anything harmful." But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He began watching the aliens more carefully. He noticed they carried small devices that they pointed at the children when they thought no one was looking. When he asked Velthek about the devices, the alien explained they were simple recording tools for their research. On the 4th day, Velthek approached Ben Carter with an unusual request. "We would like to invite some of your most promising children to visit our ships. We can show them wonders of science and technology that will inspire their young minds." Ben was thrilled by the offer. What an incredible opportunity for them. "Which children were you thinking of?" Velthek handed him a list. 38 names were written on it, including Amy Morrison. These children showed exceptional intelligence and curiosity. A brief visit to our ships would be educational for them. Jake felt his blood turn cold when he saw Amy's name on the list. He immediately went to find Ben. "I don't want Amy going on those ships," he said firmly. Ben looked surprised. "Why not?" "It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance for her to see alien technology." "Something isn't right about this," Jake insisted. "Why are they so interested in our children?" "You're being paranoid," Ben replied. "They're peaceful visitors conducting cultural exchange." Despite Jake's protests, Ben approved the visit. That afternoon, 38 excited children boarded the Zephyrian ships. Amy waved to her parents as she climbed the ramp to the nearest vessel. "I'll tell you everything when I get back," she called out. Jake and Lisa watched with other parents as the ship doors closed behind their children. The aliens had promised the visit would last only 2 hours. Jake checked his watch constantly as time passed. 2 hours became 3. Then 4. When the sun began to set, the parents grew worried. Ben tried to contact the ships but received no response. Jake grabbed his military communicator and attempted to reach the vessels on multiple frequencies. There was only silence. At midnight, the 3 ships lifted silently into the dark sky. The parents ran into the field, shouting and pleading for their children. But the ships rose higher and higher until they disappeared among the stars. Jake fell to his knees in the empty field where the ships had been. Lisa collapsed beside him, sobbing. Around them, other parents cried out in anguish and disbelief. Their children were gone. Ben Carter found a small device left behind where the ships had landed. When he activated it, a holographic message appeared. Velthek's image spoke calmly. The selected specimens have been taken for preservation and study. They will contribute to the Great Archive, where their primitive essence will be maintained for future generations. This is an honor that your species should appreciate. The message continued. Do not attempt to follow or interfere. Your technology is insufficient for such tasks. The children will be well cared for as they serve a higher purpose. Jake grabbed the device and smashed it against the ground. "Specimens," he said through gritted teeth. "They called our children specimens." Lisa looked up at the night sky where the ships had vanished. How could we have been so blind? They were never here for a cultural exchange. Ben Carter stood in shock, realizing his mistake too late. "I need to contact Earth immediately. The Defense Command has to know what happened." Jake helped Lisa to her feet and held her close. Above them, the stars seemed cold and distant. Somewhere among them, their daughter and 37 other children were prisoners of an alien race that saw them as nothing more than research subjects. "We'll get them back," Jake whispered to his wife. "No matter what it takes, we'll bring Amy home." But as he looked up at the vast emptiness of space, Jake wondered if Earth would even believe their story. How could they fight an enemy with technology far beyond their own? How could they rescue children who might already be light years away? The peaceful colony of New Haven had become a place of grief and rage. And somewhere on Earth, a message was traveling through space, carrying news that would change everything. The message was simple but terrible. They had taken the children. 6 months had passed since the children of New Haven disappeared into the stars. On Earth, Admiral Kate Sullivan sat in her office at Terran Defense Command, reviewing routine patrol reports when her assistant burst through the door. "Admiral, we have an emergency transmission from the outer colonies," Lieutenant Paul Davis said, his face pale with concern. "It's fragmentary, but you need to hear this immediately." Kate looked up from her desk. At 55, she had served in the Terran Defense Force for 30 years, but she had never seen her young assistant look so shaken. "Put it through to my office speakers." The message crackled with static and interference. Jake Morrison's voice came through, broken and desperate. "This is Captain Morrison from New Haven Colony. The Zephyrians have taken our children. 38 kids gone? They called them specimens for something called the Great Archive. If anyone receives this message, please help us. They took our babies." The transmission cut to silence. Kate stared at the speaker, feeling ice form in her stomach. She had never heard of the Zephyrians, but the anguish in the man's voice was real. "How old is this message?" she asked. 6 months, Admiral. It just reached us through the Deep Space Relay Network. The signal was heavily damaged during transmission. Kate stood up and walked to her window. Earth hung below the orbital command station, blue and peaceful in the morning light. Somewhere out there, human children were missing, taken by aliens she had never heard of. Get me everything we have on the Zephyrians. Contact all outer colonies and ask for status reports. I want to know if this has happened anywhere else. Over the next 3 days, the reports came flooding in. 12 colonies had gone silent over the past 2 years. When rescue ships finally reached them, they found the same story everywhere. Alien visitors had come claiming to want cultural exchange. Then children had vanished. The numbers made Kate sick. Over 200 human children had been taken from their families. Boys and girls between the ages of 8 and 16, all described as bright and curious by their parents. Dr. Martin Clark, Earth's leading expert on alien species, stood before Kate's desk with a thick file in his hands. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by barely controlled anger. The Zephyrians are an old species, Admiral. They've been traveling the galaxy for thousands of years. Other alien races fear them, but nobody talks about why. What do we know about their technology? Kate asked. Far more advanced than ours. Their ships can travel faster than anything we have. Their weapons and shields are beyond our current understanding. But Admiral, I found something else. Martin opened his file and pulled out several photographs. These are images from other species that have encountered the Zephyrians. Look at this. The photos showed alien children from different species, all with the same vacant stare and strange markings on their skin. Kate felt her hands clench into fists. They've done this before, she said quietly, many times. The Zephyrians collect children from what they call primitive species. They study them, experiment on them, and preserve them in their great archive. They believe they're saving the essence of lesser races before those races destroy themselves. Kate turned away from the photos. She had seen enough violence in her military career, but this was different. This was an attack on innocence itself. Where's their homeworld? The Veltar system, about 40 light years from here. But Admiral, they have facilities throughout this part of the galaxy. Finding our children won't be easy. Kate walked back to her desk and pressed a button that connected her directly to Earth's president. Alex Rodriguez answered immediately. Mr. President, we have a situation that requires your immediate attention. An hour later, Kate stood in the presidential emergency room deep beneath the Capitol building. President Rodriguez sat at the head of a long table surrounded by his top advisors. The room fell silent as Kate explained what they had learned. 200 children, the president said slowly. Taken by aliens who see them as research subjects. Yes, sir. And based on what we've learned from other species, those children are likely still alive. The Zephyrians keep their specimens for extended study. Secretary of Defense Carol Wright leaned forward. What are our military options, Admiral? Kate had been dreading this question. Limited, ma'am. Our current fleet consists mainly of patrol ships and cargo vessels. We have some military cruisers, but nothing designed for major combat operations. How long would it take to build a proper war fleet? President Rodriguez asked. 2 years minimum, sir. Maybe 3. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. 200 children could not wait 2 years. President Rodriguez stood up and walked to a wall screen showing Earth. Admiral Sullivan, I'm authorizing Operation Burning Sky. You have unlimited resources and complete authority to bring our children home. Sir, with respect, we don't have the ships for a major military operation. Then we'll make them, the president said firmly. Every civilian ship that can be converted, every cargo hauler that can mount weapons, every transport that can carry troops. I want the largest fleet in human history ready to launch in 6 months. Kate felt her heart race. Mr. President, are you declaring war on the Zephyrian Empire? Alex Rodriguez looked directly at her. Admiral, they stole our children. They're experimenting on babies we were sworn to protect. This isn't war. This is rescue with extreme prejudice. News of the abductions spread across Earth within hours. The reaction was unlike anything in human history. Parents who had never served in the military volunteered their ships and their lives. Entire families liquidated their savings to fund the rescue mission. Engineers worked around the clock to convert civilian vessels into warships. Fleet Commander Ryan Parker took charge of the conversion process. In massive orbital shipyards above Earth, cargo ships were fitted with military-grade weapons. Passenger liners were converted into troop transports. Mining vessels received armor plating and defensive systems. "We're not building a traditional fleet," Ryan explained to his staff. "We're building something the galaxy has never seen before. A fleet motivated not by conquest or territory, but by the need to bring children home." Dr. Nina Torres, a pediatric specialist, volunteered to join the medical team. She spent her days studying what little information they had about Zephyrian experimentation procedures. "We need to be prepared for anything," she told her medical staff. "These children have been prisoners for months. We don't know what has been done to them." Commander Steve Brooks took charge of training the boarding teams. Most of his volunteers were parents themselves, people who had never fired a weapon in anger, but were willing to learn. "Remember," he told them during training, "we're not soldiers. We're parents going to get our kids back. That makes us more dangerous than any army." The fleet grew larger every day. Ship after ship joined the assembly points around Earth. Each vessel carried the same message painted on its hull: "Bring them home." Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, the flagship of humanity's rescue fleet. Through the viewports, she could see hundreds of ships stretching into the distance. 847 vessels in total, crewed by volunteers who had left everything behind for this mission. Her communication officer turned toward her. "Admiral, we're receiving final clearance from Earth Command." Kate nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice reached every ship, every volunteer, every parent who had joined this desperate mission. "This is Admiral Sullivan to all ships. 6 months ago, aliens came to our colonies and stole our children. They thought we were weak because we live in peace. They thought we were helpless because we welcome strangers. Today, we show them the difference between civilization and defenselessness." She paused, looking out at the massive fleet. "We are not going to negotiate. We are not going to trade. We are going to find every child they took and bring them home. And anyone who stands in our way will learn why you never threaten the humans." Family. The fleet began to move, hundreds of ships turning toward the deep space jump points. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Ahead of them lay the unknown dangers of hostile alien territory. But for the first time in 6 months, the parents of 200 missing children had hope. Humanity was coming for its young, and nothing in the galaxy would stop them. The human fleet had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks when they encountered their first Zephyrian facility. Long-range sensors detected a massive station orbiting a dead planet in the Kepler system. The structure was enormous, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, studying the sensor readings. The station showed signs of heavy activity, with dozens of smaller ships moving around it like insects around a hive. "What do we know about this place?" she asked Dr. Martin Clark, who had joined the mission as their alien technology expert. "It appears to be a research facility," Martin replied, pointing at the scan results. "Those energy signatures suggest they're conducting experiments that require massive amounts of power." Kate felt her stomach tighten. "The kind of experiments they would perform on children?" "Possibly. Admiral, we need to be careful. This station is heavily defended, and we don't know what kind of weapons they have." Fleet Commander Ryan Parker joined them at the tactical display. "Admiral, we have 800 ships. Even if their technology is superior, we have numbers on our side." Kate nodded slowly. She had been thinking about this moment for weeks. The first battle would set the tone for everything that followed. "Send a message to all ships. We go in hard and fast. No warnings, no negotiations. If our children are on that station, we're bringing them home today." The human fleet spread out into attack formation. It was not a pretty sight. The ships were different sizes and shapes, converted civilian vessels mixed with military cruisers, but they all moved with the same purpose. Like a pack of wolves hunting for their stolen cubs, the Zephyrians detected the approaching fleet when it was still an hour away. High Commander Zextal, the station's leader, watched the sensor displays with confusion. He had never seen so many primitive ships traveling together. What species flies such crude vessels? He asked his aide. The signatures match human technology, Commander. But there are too many ships? Humans do not possess fleets of this size. Zextal studied the readings more carefully. Send a message to the approaching ships. Inform them that this is Zephyrian territory and they must leave immediately. The human fleet received the message, but did not respond. Instead, they increased speed and began charging their weapons. Kate had given clear orders. No talking, only action. The first human ship to reach weapons range was the converted cargo hauler, Vengeance. Its captain, Tom Miller, had lost his 8-year-old son Danny to the Zephyrians 6 months earlier. He pressed the firing button without hesitation. The battle began with a barrage of missiles and energy weapons that lit up the darkness of space. The Zephyrian station's shields absorbed most of the initial attack, but the humans kept firing. More ships arrived every minute, adding their weapons to the assault. High Commander Zextal realized too late that these humans were not like other species they had encountered. Most civilized races sent negotiators before fighting. They followed rules of warfare and tried to minimize casualties. But these humans attacked like wild animals protecting their young. Their tactics make no sense, Zextal said to his tactical officer. They're sacrificing ships just to get closer to us. Commander, they're not trying to capture the station intact. They're trying to destroy our defenses so they can board us. The human strategy was simple but effective. They used their converted cargo ships as battering rams, driving them straight at the Zephyrian defensive positions. When a ship was too damaged to continue fighting, its crew would ram it into enemy positions before abandoning it. Captain Steve Brooks led the first boarding party from his ship, the Liberty. He and 50 volunteers used small shuttles to reach the station's docking bays. Most of them were parents who had never been in combat before, but they fought with desperate fury. The Zephyrians inside the station were not prepared for hand-to-hand combat. They were scientists and researchers, not soldiers. When the humans broke through the airlocks, many of the aliens simply ran. Steve and his team moved through the station's corridors, searching for any sign of human children. The facility was a maze of laboratories and holding cells, each more horrifying than the last. In one room, they found cages filled with alien children from different species. The young beings looked at the humans with empty eyes, their spirits broken by months or years of captivity. Steve felt sick looking at them, knowing that human children were probably suffering the same fate somewhere else. Captain, one of his team members called out, "You need to see this." Steve followed the voice to a large laboratory filled with computer screens and medical equipment. On the screens were detailed scans of human anatomy, focusing on brain development and genetic structure. But what made Steve's blood boil were the photographs covering one wall. Hundreds of pictures showed human children of different ages, all with identification numbers written beneath their faces. Some of the children looked healthy and alert. Others appeared drugged or injured. A few had strange marks on their skin that looked like surgical scars. "Those monsters," Steve whispered. He recognized some of the faces from missing person reports. These were Earth's stolen children. His radio crackled with a message from another boarding team. "We found them. Level 7, Section C, we found some of our kids." Steve ran through the station corridors, following the directions to Level 7. When he arrived, he saw Dr. Nina Torres kneeling beside a group of human children who sat on the floor of what looked like a classroom. The children ranged in age from about 10 to 15, and they all wore simple gray clothing. "How many?" Steve asked quietly. 12 so far," Nina replied. "But Steve, there's something wrong with them. They're not responding normally." Steve looked at the children more closely. Their eyes were open and they seemed aware of their surroundings, but they showed no emotion. No fear, no joy, no recognition of being rescued. One of the girls, about Amy Morrison's age, looked up at Steve with blank eyes. "Are you here for testing today?" she asked in a flat, emotionless voice. Nina's hands shook as she examined the children. "They've been drugged or conditioned somehow. Their minds have been altered." Steve felt rage building inside him like a fire. These weren't just kidnapped children. They were children whose very souls had been damaged by alien experimentation. His radio came to life again. "All boarding teams, this is Admiral Sullivan. We've secured the main computer core. Download everything you can find about their operations and the locations of other facilities." The battle for the research station lasted 6 hours. When the fighting ended, the humans had rescued 23 children from 7 different species, including 12 human kids. But the victory felt hollow when they saw what had been done to the young prisoners. Dr. Martin Clark worked with the station's computers, downloading files that revealed the true scope of the Zephyrian operation. The Great Archive was not just one facility, but a network of research stations spread across the galaxy. Each station specialized in different types of experiments on captured children. "Admiral," Martin reported to Kate over the radio, "I've found references to at least 30 other facilities. And there are shipping schedules showing regular transfers of subjects between stations." Kate felt her determination harden into something cold and sharp. "How many children in total?" "The records are incomplete, but I estimate over 5,000, from dozens of different species. The humans make up about 4% of their collection." In the station's medical bay, Dr. Nina Torres worked to treat the rescued children. The physical injuries were bad enough, but the mental damage was worse. The children had been conditioned to accept their captivity, to see their captors as authority figures who must be obeyed. "Will they recover?" Steve asked as he watched Nina examine one of the boys. "I don't know," she admitted. "Some of them have been here for over a year. The Zephyrians have been very thorough in breaking their spirits." As the human fleet prepared to leave the destroyed research station, Admiral Kate Sullivan addressed all ships over the communication system. "Today we learned the true evil we're fighting," she said. "The Zephyrians don't just steal children. They destroy their minds and souls. What we found here is only the beginning." She looked at the tactical display showing the locations of other Zephyrian facilities that they had discovered in the station's computers. "We're no longer just on a rescue mission. We're at war with monsters who prey on innocence itself. Every facility we find, we destroy. Every Zephyrian who participated. In this horror we make pay. Our children deserve justice, and by God they're going to get it." The fleet moved away from the burning remains of the research station, heading toward the next target on their list. Behind them, they left wreckage and flames. Ahead of them lay more battles and more horrors, but for the first time since leaving Earth, they had proof that some of their children were still alive. That knowledge gave them strength to continue the hunt, no matter how long it took or how much it cost. The war had been raging for 3 months. The human fleet had split into 12 separate strike forces, each hunting down Zephyrian facilities across their territory. What started as a rescue mission had become something much darker and more terrible. Commander Rick Hughes stood on the bridge of his converted mining ship, the Iron Fist, watching another Zephyrian research station burn in the distance. This was the 15th facility his strike force had destroyed, and each one revealed new horrors that the aliens had inflicted on kidnapped children. "Any survivors?" he asked his boarding team leader through the radio. "Negative, sir. The Zephyrians killed all the test subjects before we could reach them. 26 children from 4 different species." Rick closed his eyes and felt the familiar rage building in his chest. The Zephyrians had started destroying their captives rather than let them be rescued. It was their final act of cruelty against beings they saw as nothing more than laboratory animals. "Burn it all," he said quietly. "Leave nothing standing." The human fleet had learned much about fighting the Zephyrians over the past months. Their enemy was technologically superior, but mentally weak. The aliens had spent so long fighting primitive species that they had forgotten how to deal with an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. Dr. Sophie Bell, a quantum physicist who had joined the war effort, worked day and night developing new weapons specifically designed to counter Zephyrian technology. Her greatest creation was the Hellfire missile, which could punch through energy shields that had protected alien ships for centuries. "The secret is not to fight their technology directly," she explained to a group of ship captains during a strategy meeting. "We have to make their advantages meaningless." The Hellfire missiles worked by creating quantum disruptions that caused enemy shields to collapse from the inside. It was not elegant technology, but it was effective. Human ships could now destroy Zephyrian vessels that had once seemed invincible. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian homeworld of Veltar, High Curator Velthic paced nervously in his private chambers. Reports of human attacks came in daily, each one more disturbing than the last. The primitive species that he had dismissed as harmless was systematically destroying his empire. "How many facilities have we lost?" he asked his aide, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. 47 research stations, my lord, along with 6 military bases and 12 supply depots. The humans show no interest in capturing our technology or taking prisoners. They simply destroy everything they find. Velthic walked to his window and looked out at the crystal spires of the Zephyrian capital city. For thousands of years, his people had traveled the galaxy collecting specimens from lesser species. It was their sacred duty to preserve the essence of primitive races before they destroyed themselves. "Have we tried negotiating with them?" he asked. "Multiple times, my lord. They refuse all communication. Our diplomatic ships are destroyed on sight." Velthic felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The humans were not acting like any civilized species he had encountered. They seemed driven by pure emotion rather than logical thought. "What do our military advisors recommend?" "They suggest evacuating the outer research facilities and consolidating our forces around the core worlds. The humans cannot possibly sustain this level of warfare for much longer." But the military advisors were wrong about human endurance. If anything, the war was making the humans stronger and more determined. Every destroyed facility, every murdered child, every act of Zephyrian cruelty only fed their anger. Admiral Kate Sullivan had moved her command ship to the border of Zephyrian space, where she coordinated the attacks of all 12 strike forces. Her hair had turned gray during the months of warfare, and her eyes had developed a hardness that frightened even her own officers. "Status report from all strike forces," she ordered during the daily briefing. The reports came in one by one. Strike Force Alpha had destroyed 2 more research facilities. Strike Force Beta had engaged a Zephyrian patrol fleet and eliminated it completely. Strike Force Gamma had rescued 8 children from various species, though half of them died from their injuries before reaching medical care. Total count? Kate asked her intelligence officer. "We've rescued 137 children so far, Admiral. But we estimate that over 300 have been killed by the Zephyrians to prevent rescue." Kate felt the familiar cold anger settle in her stomach. The aliens were murdering their captives rather than lose their research subjects. It was a level of evil that she had not thought possible. "Any word from the children we've rescued about Amy Morrison and the other New Haven kids? Some of them remember seeing New Haven children at the main archive facility. It's heavily fortified and located in the Veltar system, near the Zephyrian homeworld." Kate nodded. She had been expecting this news for weeks. The final battle would have to be fought at the heart of Zephyrian civilization, where their most important research was conducted on one of the converted passenger ships serving as a mobile hospital. Dr. Nina Torres worked with the rescued children who were slowly recovering from their trauma. Some of them were beginning to show signs of their original personalities returning, but others remained damaged beyond her ability to heal. 12-year-old human girl named Beth sat on the edge of a medical bed staring out the window at the stars. She had been rescued 3 weeks earlier from a facility where the Zephyrians had been testing the effects of various drugs on human brain development. Do you remember anything about the other children from your home? Nina asked gently. Beth nodded slowly. There were lots of kids from different places. The tall blue ones kept us in different sections based on where we came from. The New Haven kids were in the special area. Nina felt her heart rate increase. Special area? They said those kids were for the High Curator's personal research. They were supposed to be perfect examples of human development. Nina made notes in her medical file. The rescued children had provided crucial intelligence about Zephyrian operations, but they also revealed how systematic and thorough the aliens were in their cruelty. Back on Earth, President Alex Rodriguez addressed the global population in a speech that was broadcast to every human colony. The war had united humanity in a way that nothing else in their history had accomplished. For 9 months, our children have been prisoners of monsters who see them as laboratory animals, he said, standing before the cameras with grim determination. Our fleet has rescued many, but hundreds more remain in captivity. He paused, looking directly into the camera. I want every human in the galaxy to understand what we're fighting for. This is not about territory or resources. This is about the fundamental right of children to be safe from those who would harm them. We will not stop until every last child is brought home. The speech was heard by human colonies throughout known space. On worlds that had lost children to the Zephyrians, families gathered to listen. On planets that had been spared, parents held their own children closer and donated what they could to support the war effort. Commander Rick Hughes received new orders that same day. His strike force was to join with 3 others for a major assault on the Zephyrian industrial world of Kexival. Intelligence reports suggested that the planet manufactured the equipment used in their research facilities. We're not just going after military targets anymore, Rick explained to his crew. We're going to destroy their ability to harm any child. Ever again, the assault on Kexival lasted 2 days. The human ships faced the strongest resistance they had encountered yet, with orbital defense platforms and patrol fleets working together to protect the planet. But human tactics had evolved during months of warfare. They no longer tried to capture enemy positions intact. Instead, they used converted asteroid mining ships as massive bombs, ramming them into Zephyrian defensive installations. They employed suicide attacks that no civilized species would consider, driven by a fury that the aliens could not understand. When the battle ended, Kexival was a burning ruin. Every factory, every research center, every facility that had contributed to the torture of children was reduced to ash and melted metal. High Curator Velthic received the report of Kexival's destruction while meeting with his council of advisors. The industrial world had been one of their most important assets, and now it was gone. My lord, one of his advisors said carefully, perhaps it is time to consider releasing the remaining specimens. The humans might accept peace if we return their young. Velthic looked at the advisor with contempt. We do not negotiate with primitive species. The Great Archive represents thousands of years of scientific advancement. We cannot simply abandon our research because one barbaric race throws a tantrum. But even as he spoke, Velthic felt uncertainty creeping into his mind. The humans had proven to be unlike any enemy the Zephyrians had faced. They fought without regard for their own losses, driven by emotions that seemed to make them stronger rather than weaker. On the flagship UES Retribution, Admiral Kate Sullivan studied star charts showing the Veltar system. Long-range scouts had confirmed that the main archive facility orbited the Zephyrian homeworld, protected by their most powerful defensive systems. How many ships do we have ready for the final assault? The human fleet assembled at the edge of the Veltar system like a storm gathering strength. 612 ships of every size and design floated in formation, their weapons charged and their crews ready for the final battle. At the center of the fleet, the UES Retribution carried Admiral Kate Sullivan toward her destiny. Long-range sensors show massive defensive systems around the archive facility, reported her tactical officer. Energy shields, weapon platforms, and at least 50 Zephyrian warships protecting the station. Kate studied the tactical display without emotion. After 10 months of war, she had learned to see enemy positions as puzzles to be solved rather than obstacles to fear. Every Zephyrian defense had a weakness, and human determination always found a way through. "What about the archive station itself?" she asked. "It's enormous, Admiral. The size of a small moon with multiple sections connected by transport tubes. Our intelligence suggests the children are held in the central core, which is the most heavily protected area." On the Zephyrian homeworld below, High Curator Velthic stood in his command center watching the human fleet approach. His pale blue skin had grown even paler during the months of warfare, and his large, dark eyes showed the strain of constant defeats. "They actually came here," he said to his military commander. "The primitives dare to attack our homeworld." "General." Kekstar studied the sensor readings with professional interest. "My lord, their fleet is larger than we expected. They have more ships than our entire defensive force. But surely our technology is still superior? Our shields and weapons are far more advanced than anything they possess. That was true at the beginning of the war, my lord. But these humans learn quickly. They have developed weapons that can penetrate our shields, and their tactics are completely unpredictable." Velthic felt anger rising in his chest. How could a primitive species challenge the might of an empire that had lasted for thousands of years? The humans should have accepted their losses and retreated to their own small corner of the galaxy. "Open a communication channel to their fleet," he ordered. "It is time to end this foolishness through negotiation." The message reached Admiral Kate Sullivan as her fleet moved deeper into the Veltar system. The image of High Curator Velthic appeared on her main screen, his alien features twisted with what she assumed was meant to be a diplomatic expression. "Human Commander," Velthic began, "I am High Curator Velthic of the Zephyrian Empire. You have caused great damage to our civilization, but we are prepared to forgive your primitive behavior. Withdraw your fleet, and we will return half of your young specimens as a gesture of goodwill." Kate stared at the screen for a long moment. Around her, the bridge crew waited to see how she would respond. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold and sharp as winter steel. "You call our children specimens. You tortured them in your laboratories. You murdered hundreds of them rather than let us rescue them. And now you want to negotiate?" She stood up from her command chair and walked closer to the screen. "I have a counteroffer for you, Velthic. Release every human child in your archive immediately and surrender yourself for trial. Do this, and we will allow your homeworld to survive." Velthic's expression changed from diplomatic to outraged. "You dare threaten us? We could destroy your entire fleet with our superior technology." Kate smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You're welcome to try." The communication ended, and the final battle began. The Zephyrian defense fleet moved to intercept the humans while the orbital weapons platforms opened fire. Space filled with energy beams and explosions as the two forces collided. But the battle was different from anything the galaxy had seen before. The humans did not try to fight a traditional space battle. Instead, they used their ships like guided missiles, ramming them into Zephyrian positions and using the explosions to clear paths for other vessels. Cargo ships packed with explosives became suicide weapons that took out entire defensive platforms. Captain Tom Miller, who had lost his son Danny at the very beginning of this nightmare, piloted his damaged ship directly into a Zephyrian cruiser. His last transmission was simple: "This is for all the children, you monsters." Commander Rick Hughes led a squadron of converted mining ships straight through the defensive perimeter, using their heavy armor to absorb enemy fire while his weapons crews targeted the archive station's shield generators. One by one, the protective barriers began to fail. "All ships, concentrate fire on the main archive facility," Kate ordered over the fleet communication system. "Ignore the enemy warships. Our only target is the station where our children are being held." Dr. Sophie Bell's Hellfire missiles found their targets, punching through the archive's failing shields and creating holes that boarding parties could use. The first shuttles launched from human ships, carrying teams of volunteers who had trained for this moment for months. "Captain, Steve Brooks led the primary boarding force into the archive's central core. The facility was a maze of corridors and laboratories, each section more horrifying than the last. Display cases lined the walls, containing preserved specimens from dozens of different species. Some of the displays held children who had not survived the Zephyrian experiments. "This way," called out Amy Morrison, who was running toward them down a corridor. Steve stopped in shock. The girl was older and thinner than in the pictures he had seen, but her eyes were bright and alert. Behind her came dozens of other human children, all wearing the same gray clothing but moving with purpose and determination. "Amy, Jake Morrison's daughter from New Haven?" "Yes, sir." "We've been waiting for you to come get us. We knew Earth wouldn't abandon us." Steve felt tears in his eyes as he saw the children. Many showed signs of the trauma they had endured, but they were alive and they were fighting back. "How many of you are there?" 87 human children. "In this section," Amy replied. "But there are more in other parts of the archive. The Zephyrians separated us by species and age groups." As the boarding teams moved through the archive, they discovered the true scope of the Zephyrian horror. Thousands of children from hundreds of different species were imprisoned in the facility. Some had been there for years, subjected to experiments that had changed their bodies and minds. Dr. Nina Torres arrived with the medical team and immediately began triaging the rescued children. The physical injuries were extensive, but she was amazed by their mental resilience. The human children in particular had somehow maintained their spirits despite everything they had endured. "How did you stay strong?" she asked Amy while treating a cut on the girl's arm. "We told each other stories about home," Amy replied, "and we knew our parents would come for us. We just had to survive long enough." The battle for the archive station lasted 6 hours. Room by room, corridor by corridor, the human boarding teams fought their way through Zephyrian resistance. The aliens had some security forces, but they were not prepared for the fury of parents who had finally found their stolen children. High Curator Velthic was captured in his private laboratory, surrounded by files containing detailed records of his experiments. Captain Steve Brooks found him trying to destroy evidence of his crimes. "Please," Velthic begged when he saw the human soldiers, "I was only preserving your species for posterity. We meant no harm." Steve looked at the alien with disgust. "You tortured children. You called them specimens. You destroyed their innocence for your twisted research. But we gave them immortality in our archive. Their essence will live forever." Steve turned away from the cowering alien. "Take him to the detention area. He'll face trial for his crimes." As the archive station fell to human forces, Admiral Kate Sullivan received reports from all sectors. Over 400 children from various species had been rescued alive. Thousands more had died during their captivity, their remains preserved in the Zephyrian collection like trophies. President Alex Rodriguez, who had traveled from Earth to witness the final battle, addressed the fleet from the Bridge of the Retribution. "Today, we have shown the galaxy that humanity protects its own," he said. "The Zephyrians thought they could steal our children because we were peaceful. They learned the difference between being civilized and being helpless." The rescued human children were transferred to hospital ships for medical care and counseling. Many would need months or years to fully recover from their trauma, but they were finally safe and heading home. Amy Morrison stood at the viewport of the medical ship, watching the burning remains of the Zephyrian archive facility. Her father Jake and mother Lisa had arrived with the rescue fleet, and they held her close as they watched their daughter's prison turn to ash. "Will the bad aliens ever come back?" Amy asked quietly. Jake looked out at the destroyed Zephyrian fleet and the human ships that surrounded their homeworld. "No, sweetheart, they won't be hurting any children ever again." The war was over, but its effects would be felt throughout the galaxy for generations. Other alien species had watched in amazement as humans, transformed from peaceful farmers and traders into an unstoppable force of parental fury. Word spread quickly through interstellar civilization. Humanity was not a species to be trifled with. It might seem gentle and welcoming, but threaten their children, and they would pursue you to the ends of the galaxy with weapons forged from pure determination.